Today on the Communiverse, a devastating flood in Texas kills 80, including 28 children. Officials had years to install a warning system and did nothing. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. takes on Big Candy, but M&Ms aren't backing down on artificial dyes just yet. Hollywood is stuck in sequel hell. Jurassic World, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Freaky Friday. Is originality completely dead? Trump's global tariff threats spark chaos. But is it economic strategy or just made for TV theater? And the U.S. Department of Justice says that Jeffrey Epstein died by, get this, suicide. No murder. There's no client list, no mystery. But do you believe it? All that and more today on the Communiverse. So thanks so much for joining me. I'm TJ Walker. This is the Communiverse. This is the show where we do a deep dive into top news stories about business, technology, and culture. We analyze it, decode it through the lens of communication to build your success. It's really a merger of news and personal development. So it's something new. You don't see it everywhere. It's not for everyone. But if you actually want to improve yourself, improve your thinking, improve your own career, your personal life, while learning about news at the same time, then I think this is, in fact, the show for you. So please stay with us. Story one, officials ignored warnings, 80 dead in a Texas flood. 80 lives lost, including 28 children, after catastrophic flooding in Kerr County, Texas. And now we know this might have been preventable. Officials had debated installing a flood warning system for nearly a decade. Sirens, gauges, even $1 million grant were all discussed and rejected. The reason? Too expensive. Instead, residents were left relying on late-night text, spotty cell service, and word of mouth. By the time some alerts went out, roads were impassable, and floods had surged 15 feet in 15 minutes. Local leaders say taxpayers wouldn't fund it. They're not necessarily wrong, but now the price of inaction is devastatingly clear. Flash Flood Alley lived up to its name. That's the name of this part of Texas. But Kerr County officials may never live down their choice to do nothing. A few more interesting statistics here. Again, there was a $1 million system proposed a while back that would create alerts. They said, oh, that's too much money. And Texas in general has a $54 billion backlog in not all infrastructure, but just flooding infrastructure. Only $669 million is funded. So we talked a little about this earlier in the week, or yesterday rather, and it does come down to basically storytelling. All human beings, we look at the world through stories. We interpret the world through stories. We vote for politicians based on their stories. And anywhere in the world, some politician can gain some votes by telling you a story that, hey, government's stealing your money. You deserve to keep your own tax dollars in your own pocket. Government's just going to waste it. That's a compelling message everywhere in the world. There's no doubt about it. And of course, there has to be some waste in government. There's waste in any organization. But, and it's a big but, now 80 people are dead. Can I guarantee you that nobody would be dead if the government had spent tens of millions of dollars on better weather reporting services and flood alert? I can't guarantee you that. But as investigations continue, that seems to be the growing consensus, that this is a systems failure because of lack of investment in infrastructure. So I mentioned that's the story. Governments waste, you deserve your money. But another story is we're all a part of a community. We're all human beings, part of a village. And collectively, we have to take action sometimes. Otherwise, there won't be a public school. Otherwise, there won't be any roads. Otherwise, there'll be horse poop in every street because there's no sewage system. No matter how rich you are, it's unlikely you're going to build a sewage system just for your home and just for your office. It requires collective action, collective payment, whether you want to call it a tax or a fee or whatever, somehow government has to raise the money and spend money on infrastructure. So that's a compelling message too. When politicians run on the message of, we're a part of a community, let's build our own community by making schools better, roads better, having more police, having a weather service that can alert us to when a flood could come and take dozens and dozens of our little girls and drown them, that's a compelling message too. So we have a competition between essentially two stories about how the world should work. Now we're seeing it play out in really deadly real time here in this case of a flood. Texas, of course, is known for being a state that the dominant story is taxes are bad, government's bad, the private sector will solve all problems. And they famously do not even have a state income tax. Fewer than 10 states in the United States do not have an income tax. I happen to be one in Florida, so let me not seem like I'm holier than thou. But Texas is one of these states that doesn't have a lot of money because they don't raise state income taxes. And there's a whole culture permeating down to the local level that says taxes are essentially always bad. Well, taxes are bad. You know what else is bad? 80 people dying from a flood because the government couldn't warn them through accurate weather forecasting and through alert systems and sirens. So nobody has a monopoly on the perfect world. There have to be trade-offs. I don't like paying taxes. I assume you don't like paying taxes. But I also wouldn't want to wake up one morning and find out my daughter had been swept off into a creek and drowned. Nobody wants that. So this is going to be a time where there needs to be a real investigation, not just at the county level and the town level, Kerr County, where this tragedy occurred in Texas, but at the state level and yes, the national level. More and more reports are coming in that cuts to the National Weather Service because of the current administration is partially to blame. And this needs a thorough investigation and a thorough analysis. I'm hoping that whoever does provide an independent analysis, whether they're independent auditors at these agencies left, they feel free to really let the facts speak for themselves, to report the facts as they find them, and they do not feel pressure to make any politician or higher up or administration look good, because we do live in a time when there's more pressure like that than ever before, certainly in the last half a century here in the United States. So I'll be keeping you updated on this issue. It's obviously a horrible tragedy. It's sad, but I think there's nothing weaker and frankly more pathetic to just say, oh, hearts and prayers, thoughts and prayers now, and oh, it's too early to discuss about how to make the problem better or to eliminate the problem in the future or to reduce the problem in the future. That's typically what people say when there are tragedies that are preventable, like mass killings with guns at schools. Oh, it's too soon to talk about it. Well, when can we talk about it? I'm here to tell you, I want to talk about it right here on the Communiverse because it fundamentally relates to how we as human beings send out communication to others, how we receive communication to others. So what I'm hoping is not that you will just in a knee-jerk way always say yes to any politician or bureaucrat who says, you got to spend more money on X. I'm not asking for that. But I am hoping that you form more scrutiny and that you dig a little deeper. So if someone just says, my opponent wants to keep your taxes the same, I'll cut taxes, you got to ask them, what specifically do they want to cut? And here's the real trigger I think you should listen for. If all they do is say generically waste, fraud, and abuse, you may end up with 80 people dead in your community because there's nothing labeled in any budget that says waste, fraud, and abuse. There are things like speakers and alert systems to let people know a flood is coming and you need to go to higher ground. That is in budget sometimes, or it's removed from budget. So Ask the tough questions so you can go beyond the superficial story, which is very appealing because no matter where you are in the political spectrum, you can tell a story that's very appealing. Someone on another political perspective could say, hey, here's a situation where every family has all the food they need, all the medical care they need. Everyone has a job. Anyone who doesn't want to work doesn't have to. They'll be given a government subsidy. Might sound appealing to you, but then if you realize, oh, I got to pay 95% income tax and I can never have any savings or accumulate, well, all of a sudden it's not as appealing. Now, I don't know anyone advocating that particular philosophy here in the United States, but the real lesson here is dig deeper. When politicians, policy leaders are painting a story for you on how to allocate resources, because 100% of your money in your own pocket is great, but if there's no police force, someone can come and rob you blind or murder you. If there's no money spent on infrastructure, you may have the greatest house in the world, but if you can't actually drive anywhere because there are no roads, you're going to starve to death unless you're a subsistence farmer. And I don't think any of us want to go back to that these days. So we'll be keeping you updated on this story. It's a horrific tragedy. You can certainly get more up-to-date facts regularly from a lot of news sources. What I'm trying to do here on the Communiverse is go a little deeper and look at how these ideas are permeated in our culture, how it's communicated, what lessons you can learn as far as sending and receiving communication. So if you're just joining me, I'm TJ Walker. This is essentially a pilot. We're doing some tests of a brand new show that's going to roll out in a more big time, more produced, polished way on September 2nd, 2025. But the basic concept is we look at the top 5 stories of the day, analyze them through the lens of communication, and then boost all of this in order to boost your own personal development, your own personal success. Okay, issue 2, Kennedy takes on Big Candy. But M&Ms aren't melting away just yet. Let's take a look at this story. Health Secretary, and forgive me to those of you in India and other places around the world, we love our international audience. This is another story that has a U.S. focus. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants to kick petroleum-based food dyes out of your pantry. And he's made surprising progress. Jell-O, Kool-Aid, even Lucky Charms are on track to go dye-free by 2027. But when it comes to America's most iconic candy, M&Ms, the fight gets sticky. Candy makers led by Mars aren't budging. They argue that bright colors equal kid appeal, and the natural dyes are too expensive, unstable, and taste like beets. Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again program relies on peer pressure, not regulation, but the candy industry isn't feeling the love. With help from Congress and a powerful trade group, they're resisting reform unless forced by law. States like West Virginia and Texas may do just that, imposing bans and warning labels by 2028. So the question remains, will the M&M rainbows survive or melt under regulatory scrutiny? Now, full disclosure, I like M&Ms. I don't eat more than a few a year these days, but as a kid, I love them. They are tasty chocolate, and they are colorful. There's no doubt about it. I want to be fair here and objective. There's a lot of pure partisan analysts out there. And of course, I have my own beliefs and perspectives. But what I'm trying to do here is be fair, honest, and objective for you and call it like I see it and be objective when analyzing ideas permeating through the news and top newsmakers. I do want to give credit to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on this issue. A lot of people on the far left and far right have made a case for years that the whole regulatory system for food and drugs in the United States is captured by big industry. And in this particular case, they have a point with what's marketed to kids, the dyes that have absolutely no nutritional value, and there's a lot of evidence that they're not healthy for you at all. They've been able to get away with it because they hire the most lobbies. The people who work in the government then leave to go work for the very industries they regulated. So it is a bit incestuous, and Kennedy has made a point of calling this out. I give him credit for that. I hope that he's able to use his persuasive skills and perhaps those of his boss to encourage food companies, candy companies, to get the dyes out. Now, the far bigger problem, frankly, and Kennedy's not going to address it directly, I can't solve the problem, is kids are eating dozens and dozens and dozens of pounds of sugar every year, more than they need. We've gone from, just 150 years ago, maybe 5 pounds of sugar to maybe 70 pounds of sugar. And by all accounts, whether it's sugar, processed sugar, well, specifically processed sugar, which is in candy, artificial sugars, fake sugars, all of these sweeteners that aren't just found in fruit, they're basically horrible for your body. That's why we're seeing a massive, massive epidemic in children being not only overweight, but obese. And the onslaught of type 2 diabetes in children is just off the charts. It's epidemic levels, and it's shortening their lives. It's killing kids, certainly reducing their lives by decades. The color of the M&Ms isn't the real problem. The problem is candy has gone from being an occasional treat, maybe something once a month, every couple of months, or a couple of weeks, which is what it was until a few decades ago or half a century ago, to something kids feel and adults feel like, I need to be eating this all day long. That's a problem. That's what's killing people quite often. So the dye stuff, yeah, it's good to get it out. It's on the margins. Now, I told you I was going to be fair. I've just given praise for Kennedy for talking about this issue, trying to use his position for moral suasion with big candy companies. I also give him credit for talking about the need for kids exercising, eating unprocessed food, fighting chronic disease because people aren't moving enough. They're doing what I'm doing right now, sitting too much. And although I do get 12 to 15,000 steps a day, I give him credit for focusing on some very important issues, getting people to move more, getting processed food out of people's diets, encouraging people to not drink sugar water, to not eat candy, to eat real food that's unprocessed. I give him credit for that. I also think he is essentially an accomplice to murder with what he's doing on vaccines. By all accounts from the mainstream medical community, Kennedy is an anti-vax nut, and he is getting rid of mainstream scientists who have been in charge of boards and regulatory bodies regulating and monitoring vaccines, and he's putting in kooks who don't believe in vaccines. And we're not that far away from installing people who believe in spontaneous generation or bloodletting or other things that have been very much disproven by science. Now, science is not always right, but what science has going for it is hypotheses come out, they're tested, there's peer review. When theories are proven wrong, they are discarded, and new theories where there's more evidence, that is what gains traction. That's science. It's not that science, any one scientist is always right. And that's what I am afraid has come under attack in general with a lot of what if things Robert F. Kennedy's doing. But again, I'm fair. I'm giving him credit today for what he is specifically doing regarding trying to change what goes into all of these candies with colors and dyes. So yes, these are very colorful here, but doesn't mean it's good for you at all. A couple more facts. Jell-O, Kool-Aid, and Lucky Charms pledged to go dye-free by 2027. And those were staples of my childhood. Now you could say, well, TJ, you seem healthy. You ate all that garbage. Yeah, but who knows? Maybe all that junk food I did eat as a kid takes 20 years off of where I could have ended up. Maybe it degrades the final quality of life for my last 15 years. I don't really know. States like Texas and West Virginia are trying to impose their own bans and labels starting in 2027. Natural dyes can fade when exposed to light and heat, and it can alter flavor. So that is the concern of candy makers, and I understand that. If I'm a candy maker, I don't want to be selling candy that doesn't taste good. Now, what the critics are saying is, okay, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can get on his soapbox all he wants. These big multi-billion-dollar candy companies are not going to do anything until the law forces them. You must handcuff them. If it's simply, this is a good idea, they are not going to do it at all. So we'll see. If you have kids, don't let them eat candy. Now, this is a constant battle. Am I saying you can't have Halloween? No, I'm not saying that. Do we ever bring candy into my house with my daughter? Yes. But the world is filled with candy everywhere. Every birthday party you or your kid go to, there's going to be candy. My recommendation is, yes, occasional candy, fine, but don't bring it into your house. If you bring it into your house and there's that bowl of M&Ms and the apple or pear next to it, the M&Ms are going to win every time. If the only thing visible on your counter, the bananas, the pears, the grapes, and you're hungry, that's what you will eat. So I don't eat a lot of candy, and it's not because I have willpower. It's because I simply want to live longer, and I've made a conscious decision. I'm not going to buy it and bring it to my house. If someone puts, this happened 2 nights ago. I was playing pickleball with my wife and friends. It started to rain. Someone started a picnic, and there was a beautiful cake, and they put it in front of me. I said, TJ, you got to try it. Well, you know what? I did. And it had processed sugar in it. I don't think it had any dyes in it, but I did eat it. I'm not saying you can never, ever eat sugar, but what you can do is use some discretion when you're in the grocery store, when you're walking by a candy store or bakery, and simply decide, I'm not going to buy it now, because it's easier to nip it off upstream there rather than waiting till it gets into your house. Switching gears, let's take a look at Hollywood. A lot of new movies out, a lot going on. We're in Hollywood this year, as in every year, but let's just take a look at some of the big news. Reboots, remakes, and retro. Is originality dead in Hollywood? That's the question. Is Hollywood out of ideas or just addicted to nostalgia? This summer, theaters are flooded with reboots, remakes, sequels, and cinematic deja vu. From Jurassic Park, Rebirth, the 28 years later, the creative pitch isn't what's new, but what can we recycle with just enough gloss to sell more Slurpee cups? Director Gareth Edwards even called the new Jurassic movie karaoke, and he's not wrong. Nearly every major release is repackaged from the 1990s. Studios blame audiences for craving comfort, but they also fear risk. Original films like Elio and Black Bag flopped. Even winners like Sinners were rooted in recycled formulas. Forget Jurassic. Hollywood itself is fossil. Now, a couple more facts to chew on here. Major 2025 releases were all basically reboots. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Freaky Friday, The Naked Gun. I mean, these are all remakes of old movies. What's really going on here? Well, in the olden days, when I was growing up, certainly when movies really started, that was the only thing to get your attention. That was the only form of entertainment. Certainly when the movie industry really started, nobody had TVs at home. Nobody had the internet. And so that was, for many people, their only form of entertainment. They'd go down to the Bijou Theater on a Saturday or Sunday, watch a double feature, and that was it for screen time and entertainment for the whole week. You could put out a movie Any movie didn't have to have a plot, great actor, didn't even have to have people speak. People would watch it because there was no competition. And that's the real problem in 2025 and beyond, is Hollywood is facing massive, massive competition. Because of that, they're trying to mitigate risk. They're trying to eliminate risk. The way they are doing it is by trying to give people something they're already used to that has a built-in fan base. So they know, worst case scenario, at least we're going to get a few million people in there because there are that many fans who know this and are familiar with it. And when people are going to the movie theater, especially with their family, and they're trying to make a last-minute decision, and they see 5 or 6 names of movies they've never heard of, and one reminds them of a favorite TV show or movie they saw in the past, it's just human nature to go with that thing you're familiar with. So it's all well and good to criticize Hollywood, but there has to be some admission. It was a lot easier for people in Hollywood in the past because they didn't have to compete with YouTube. They didn't have to compete with every movie ever made available on Amazon Prime and Netflix and Apple Plus and all of these venues. So it is much, much harder. The stakes are higher. It's costlier to make a high quality movie, even though AI and computer technology and computer graphics has reduced some cost for animation. It's still wildly expensive if you want the big traditional movie stars. And so I genuinely feel for the people in Hollywood. What's the real lesson for you or me? I think the ultimate way of having a career is being a creator. Now, you may be a scientist. You may be an administrator at a hospital. You still are creating experiences for people. You are still creating something that results in a product that benefits other people. If you're a scientist, your research may lead to people's lives being saved. I'm a creator in that I create online communication skills courses and personal development courses that help millions of people around the globe. It's fun for me, and I enjoy it, and it is financially rewarding as well. I want you to have the career you want. Now, you could be a Wall Street trader, you could be a social worker, you could be a speech pathologist. In all of those careers, you have an opportunity to help people, benefit yourself, and create. The real lesson I take away from this is we all have to adopt to a new world where there's infinite competition for attention. In the old days, it wasn't just people who got a big movie studio to greenlight their script and let them make a movie. It's that there was no other competition around. And also, if you got a show on a TV network, boom, almost anything you did made you famous. You could be very slow and earnest like Mr. Rogers on PBS. You're still going to get almost a fourth of the country watching you because there were only 4 channels in most cities, 3 TV networks here in the United States, and a public TV station. So there was so much more flexibility for people if they could get through the gatekeepers of major TV networks, radio networks, huge media companies. Same with book publishing. 1970s, there was only about 40,000 books published a year. Now, depending on how you even count a book, there's 1 to 2 million books a year published, including self-publishing. So there was a time simply publishing a book, you were guaranteed to make some impact, get reviews, get attention. These days, you can publish a book and literally sell 0 copies. Believe me, I know people it's happened to. So everything has changed because the internet has gotten rid of the cost of distributing content. I'm not here to say that makes the world better, but it makes it profoundly different. So my recommendation to you is, if you want to make a movie for theatrical release because you have this vision that it's going to look best on a giant screen, I don't want to throw cold water on that. But if your real goal is to be creative and to tell stories and to use the medium of video rather than just typing a story, do practice some of your craft in a way that costs no money. That's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm putting on a show for you. In the old days, this would have cost a lot of money. There would be camera operators, lighting people, script writers, researchers. I'm doing it all myself. Now, is it as good as a 60 Minutes show or whatever the dominant news show was in your country 20 years ago? It's different. It's arguably not as slickly produced, but it also means I'm not dependent on getting half the country to watch me at any one moment, or 20% of the country, or even 1% of the world watching me. I can still make my content, my show, viable. So that really is my lesson to you, in my message to you, which is, don't tell yourself, well, I have to have a talk show on this network or this. It's fine to have goals, aspirations. But the best way to get a movie out into the world, or a TV show out into the world, or a radio show out in the world is to just do it yourself as a podcast, audio or video, preferably both. Start practicing your craft. Keep your expenses as close to the bone as possible, even if you're already wealthy, because it may take you 18 months to find an audience. And if you're spending a lot of money, even if you have plenty of money, it's not fun anymore after about 6 months. You will give up. And if you're like most people who start their own podcast, you don't go past the 3rd episode. And something like 90% of people never go past the 7th episode. So that's why I'm urging you, be a creator. You can create fiction, whether it's movies, short form, comedy bits. You can create nonfiction content, as I do, but create and keep your expenses low. I entered the online training world in 1998 and spent zero money on it for many, many years. And believe it or not, I still have courses that make money for me, if not every day, every month, where it was me sitting in a closet with a $20 microphone and a $20 webcam. I've sort of upgraded my equipment now, but a lot of those things made simply with zero editing, zero production, zero special effects, zero swishes and sound effects. They still help people today. They make money. Now, if you want to be a filmmaker, I understand that doesn't answer all of your problems or all of your questions, but I do want you to think about how to be creative using your own mind, your ability to use the latest technology around to create something of value for people. You can always upgrade. You can always have someone say, that's the greatest thing ever. Now let's give you millions of dollars of budget and we'll turn it into a feature movie. You can always do that. No problem. So I do want to urge you, be a creator. Doesn't have to be fiction. Doesn't have to be a book. Doesn't have to be a daily show like this, but do something. It's good for your brain. It's good for your self-esteem. I get a joy out of creating the Communiverse here for you on a daily basis. I get a joy of knowing that my hundreds of public speaking courses, communication skills courses are helping millions of people around the globe. So I would like you to experience that. Doesn't matter if you're over 65, doesn't matter if you're 20 years old. It's something you can do at virtually any age. Now, let's talk about another creator here, someone who is very creative. I'll leave it to you to decide if that is necessarily a good thing, but we're going to switch to economic issues right now that does touch on some other aspects of our society as well. Trump's trade war, real policy or just ratings bait? Now, this is according to both the New York Times and the Daily Beast. President Trump's global tariff crusade is dominating headlines again. But is it economic strategy or is it just political theater? According to the New York Times, Trump is poised to reimpose sweeping tariffs by August 1st if countries don't strike new trade deals. So far, only Britain and Vietnam have reached vague, kind of, sort of handshake agreements, while dozens of others are scrambling to avoid levies as high as 50%. But the Daily Beast paints a different picture. An anonymous White House insider calls the whole thing fake. This insider says there's no real deadline, there's no clear framework, just a made-for-TV countdown show designed to boost Trump's image as a tough dealmaker. So is this about restoring trade balance or just another ratings stunt? Now, a little background. Trump has done this time and time again. I've lost count. Most people have lost count since he's taken office of how many times he says, I'm going to give you a 30%, 50%, 90% tariff. If you don't give me a deal by X date, that date passes. And it just keeps going on. He takes them off, he puts them on, gets a lot of attention. Trump brags about 12 letters sent to foreign leaders as threats. Let's not forget, he initially, when launching his tariff plan, listed virtually every country in the world, including tiny island nations that have no people, no products, and no services. How you put a tariff on a country like that, I'm not quite sure. And so far, it's caused massive chaos in the stock market. We've seen some indices in the last 3 months go down as much as a third. Now, in fairness, they're back up, most of them at an all-time high. The market has bought into this idea of Trump called TACO, which stands for Trump always chickens out. They've sort of priced that into the market. So traders around the globe are seemingly ignoring what Trump is saying on tariffs. Now, at some point, if the tariffs are actually imposed, it's going to be wildly disruptive to supply chains and to products going back and forth from different countries. And there's simply no way there can't be massive inflationary pricing on a lot of products. If a product has a 90% tariff on it, companies are not going to be able to absorb this. Now, I will point out, I want to be fair, and I try to be fair with you. The Daily Beast is known as sort of a Democratic side, anti-Trump, sort of a left-wing publication. They only have one source, and the source is not on the record. So we don't really know who this is. It could be a secretary or an administrative assistant who just works with tourists at the White House, giving an opinion. We don't really know. What we do know about Trump is, in fact, the one thing we know about Trump with absolute certainty is he is a great TV performer. He places a lot of value on looking good on TV, playing tough on TV. Indeed, his entire rise to power came from being a TV star from the show The Apprentice, where he was a tough guy and said, "You're fired." So that's a part of what's going on here. And you have to factor that into account. A lot of people say, well, TJ, you're being too hard. Trump is this wildly successful billionaire businessman. Well, is he? According to Bloomberg, reputable news source, the New York Times, who analyzed Donald Trump's finances before he entered politics, they concluded he'd actually made no money from his own business deals. He would have been richer if he had just sat by the beach his whole life and put his daddy's money into an index fund. And everyone likes to forget he's had numerous bankruptcies, business failures. Football teams go out of business, airlines go out of business, vodka go out of business, Bibles and all sorts of things that really haven't made any money and have lost money. A lot of his hotel properties don't make money. So the one area, and I do want to give credit to Trump where credit is due, he has been a very successful TV personality. He is world class at being on TV and playing the part of the wheeler dealer businessman, the dealer, the let's make a deal businessman. He's been very good at that. He's been successful at that. But I should point out, that's not the same thing as being an actual businessman. And it's not just the Daily Beast pointing this out. It's pretty much any fair-minded observer has claimed that Donald Trump, what he really cares about is the news cycle today. What's on TV? Are people talking about me? And yes, every single time he talks about a new tariff or raising a tariff or reducing a tariff or a deal, he gets a lot of attention. By all accounts, that's the real goal. The goal is not necessarily to eliminate tariffs. The goal is not necessarily to impose new tariffs, although it is a topic he's talked about for decades. Most economists, no matter how right-wing, centrist, left-wing they are, do not believe that the United States is somehow unfairly victimized by other countries around the world with respect to tariffs. Does China keep us out of certain things like intellectual property and people in China being able to watch my YouTube show right now? Yeah, they do. But in general, trade policies around the globe help the United States because that's why we have the largest, richest economy in the entire world. We couldn't be screwed over that horribly every day and still be the strongest economy in the world. It doesn't make sense. So where is Trump going with all this? In the past, what's happened is he's tried these things. All of a sudden, the bond market starts punishing him. The stock market goes way down. And he seems to be very sensitive to this idea that he's a loser when it comes to managing an economy. He's supposed to be the big businessman who's great at business. So when certain things happen with enough force and velocity, as was happening a few months ago with all these tariffs, it allowed his enemies to say, hey, see how horrible you are? You're destroying the economy. And they like to point out that Donald Trump, under his first administration, had more jobs lost than any other president since Herbert Hoover, many, many decades ago. The last thing he wants is to be seen as an economic loser for the economy, especially given the fact that he campaigned on the platform of, I'm going to improve your standard of living. Inflation's too high. I'm going to make you richer and put money in your pocket. Well, if people are seeing their 401ks vaporized by as much as 30%, which did happen just a few months ago, believe me, it's hard for him to make that argument. So that's when he tends to backtrack or change the subject and talk about migrants or aliens or all sorts of other things. But here he is back again, getting attention. Is there some grand strategy behind all of this? Many of the president's strongest supporters say he's playing, three-level chess, and it's all this grandmaster strategies, the consummate deal maker. I simply see no evidence to suggest that. It does seem to be something he makes up on the fly on a daily basis, in part based on who has either criticized him or praised him or a mood he's in. So we'll see. We're going to keep you updated on that. A lot of exciting things. Random Rick is saying hello. As Eminem got rid of red before, which is a bit shifty in general. Asia newsflash, candy is bad for you. Yes, absolutely. Oh, also newsflash, not Asia newsflash. Sorry about that. And Rick, thanks so much for stopping by. We're going to close out today. Last big story is relating to other things going on in Washington, D.C. And for those of you in other countries, feel free to submit topics that you would like me to discuss and analyze on this program. We don't break news on this show, but we do analyze it through a communications lens in order to help you have better understanding about communication and to boost your own personal success. That is what we are about right here, in learning how the mind processes information, looks at biases, and A great example of that is in this next story. The United States Department of Justice says that Epstein, the famed pedophile, died by suicide, that there was no client list and no murder. This is according to Axios earlier today. It's the investigation that launched 1,000 conspiracies. But according to a newly released memo obtained by Axios, the Trump administration's Department of Justice and FBI have closed the case on Jeffrey Epstein for good. The memo concludes that Epstein died by suicide in 2019. And despite years of rumors, officials say they found no client list, no blackmail ring, and no evidence of murder. The FBI even released enhanced surveillance footage showing no one entered Epstein's cell block the night he died. Even MAGA insiders like Dan Bongino and FBI Director Kash Patel now publicly reject the conspiracy theories they once boosted. But critics and lawmakers on the right still want answers. So is this truly the final chapter or just another version of the official story that no one believes, or I'll say some people don't believe? A couple more facts. Dan Bongino, who was this MAGA influencer, right-wing talk shows, Fox podcast, really juicing this whole rumor mill and conspiracy theory, has now gone on record saying, I've seen the file, he killed himself. But I got to tell you, when I saw him say that on the Joe Rogan show, he seemed rather sheepish. He seemed rather embarrassed. Now, Musk accused Trump of being in the Epstein files, famously, just a few weeks ago, and then walked it back. The Department of Justice says no further disclosures will be made due to victim privacy. Okay, so here's what I think is the important communication issue. Everybody loves a conspiracy theory. Now, we're not all equally willing to buy it hook, line, and sinker. But in the world of the internet, our modern times, it's never been easier to spread nonsense conspiracy theories. And it doesn't require the internet to do that. Many people don't realize when Gutenberg's printing press was invented, it wasn't automatically something that created the Enlightenment and helped science and the flow of information. No. People used it to publish books naming women they said were witches in their community. And tens of thousands of people were murdered because of how conspiracy theories were spread with that high-tech solution at the time, which was the printing press. Now we have something that's really supercharged communication. The internet, every podcast, every tweet. And we've gotten to the point where if you have a particular political belief and a viewpoint and a party you like, there is going to be someone telling you that the other guys, the other party, especially if that party's in power, is lying to you, and that horrible, horrible, horrible things happen that you're not being told about. And it plays to our ego. We want to know the inside poop. It also makes us feel smart of, oh, I'm too smart to buy the official line here. I've seen this my whole life where people become so emotionally invested into thinking there was a conspiracy to assassinate John F. Kennedy. Now, there may have been plenty of people who didn't like John F. Kennedy, who would have liked to have seen him dead. But anyone who actually looks at the evidence dispassionately and reads serious work from serious investigators and historians comes to the same conclusion I do, which is there's just no evidence there was a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy. It was, in fact, done by a lone gunman. I realize some of you hearing that like, I'll never listen to TJ again. He's crazy. Well, no, calm down a minute. Let's not have such an emotional investment into conspiracy theories. Are there conspiracies from time to time? Sure. But there's also an openness in our society and most societies and a chance for people to question things and sources to come out. And Here's the real thing I've noticed about human beings. It's impossible for people to keep secrets. People love to blab, they love to talk, and that's why most conspiracy theories can easily be debunked. Let's look, just for example, at the so-called conspiracy to murder John F. Kennedy, to assassinate him. In order to believe that, you have to believe that everyone associated with it was, first of all, so evil and so competent to pull something like that off. And they're so selfless that they never wanted to sell a book or sell an interview and a tell-all. I mean, if anyone really had orchestrated that and been able to pull it off, certainly on their deathbed, they could have sold a book for $10 million and have evidence to back it, and yet that's never happened. Perfect example of why I personally don't believe in most conspiracies is the Bill Clinton scandal of the late 1990s. He didn't want the world to know about his physical entanglements with Monica Lewinsky. She didn't want anyone to know, and yet it both came out because people just can't keep it in. They just talk. And Monica told one person, Linda Tripp, and then the whole world found out. It's really hard to keep secrets, especially in the internet age. That's why I think it's not that a conspiracy can never happen, but that the default position for any intelligent, rational person should be extreme skepticism, to look at the evidence and to verify the evidence. The evidence can't simply be, well, they say this happens, but what about this? Therefore, this didn't really happen this way. It had to be this evil conspiracy of people doing horrible things. That's essentially the thought process of many, many conspiracy theorists. This is a particularly odd situation with Epstein in that you had so many people who, frankly, made a lot of money off of their podcast, their social media platforms, selling ads, peddling this idea that Epstein was murdered to allegedly help whoever in their party they don't like. Now, it went both ways because Donald Trump famously is in videos having hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, partying with him, saying what a fun guy he was, how they both like attractive young ladies. But Bill Clinton was seen frequently, or at least occasionally, in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein. So you had people on one team saying, oh, it must have been a murder because a guy we don't like was seen as hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein hung out with everyone famous all across the spectrum. So it made it easy to put two and two together, only it doesn't necessarily add up. Just because one person is bad and there's someone else you don't like and they had a meeting, doesn't mean there was a conspiracy for murder. Now, are there conspiracies in the world? Sure, I would argue, and I think a lot of people on the right and left would argue, that there is a conspiracy of food and drug companies that lobby politicians, give money to politicians, conspire to get a lot of things available for sale in the form of horrible supplements, some drugs that don't work, because it gives them profit. They are conspiring together. But it's not a conspiracy in the sense that it's all done secretly. It's done openly in public hearings, and the cash they give is all documented. So it's not the cloak and dagger stuff that you have to worry about. I would argue there's a conspiracy between doctors, the American Medical Association, big insurance companies. There's a conspiracy to get the United States, on average, to pay $13,000 a person for healthcare a year, rather than the $6,500 a year people pay for better healthcare in Europe, Canada, and places like that. But it's not all done behind closed doors. They are doing it publicly through lobbying, through running for office themselves quite often, through influencing public policy. So we have this bizarre quilt work of laws that put together really the worst of both worlds when it comes to our healthcare system. We do have socialized medicine in the sense that the United States government spends more on healthcare through tax dollars than any government in the world. And yet we have a private sector where every doctor thinks of themselves as this big successful entrepreneur where they deserve to make $500,000 or $1 million a year for some specialties. I'm not saying every doctor makes that much. So yes, be open to looking for conspiracies around you, but be skeptical. Question the official language, but also question the people peddling you conspiracies. Because quite often, anytime I see someone pushing a conspiracy, 2 minutes later, they're trying to sell you some supplement made out of shark cartilage and dog poop that will have absolutely no benefit to your life and is likely to actually harm you. So be careful. When it comes to health, I do think that it's important not just to do the calisthenics and the push-ups every day as I do, but to find some sport you like. So I do from time to time want to share with you my favorite sport. And this may not shock you given the state of my hair and a few wrinkles, but I absolutely love pickleball. I played twice yesterday with my wife and friends here in Florida. I do think it's the most enjoyable sport. I played tennis for 50 years. I've given up tennis almost completely and now play pickleball. So you'll be happy to know I won, I think, about 8 out of 10 matches yesterday. If you're a pickleball player, let me know. I would love to hear from you. And we can talk about that from time to time. It gets the publicity of being the fastest growing sport in America. I don't know if that's completely true, but it is talked about. It's fun. I'm about to move to a new community, and the deciding factor, frankly, was they're building 12 pickleball courts, a 5-minute walk from my home. So I hope to play even more. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you like this, please subscribe to the channel wherever you're watching this. Hit a like. Leave a comment if you can. Let me know what you like, don't like, and suggestions for improvement. Thanks. See you tomorrow.